we have a $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. We've hit our limit on our credit line. Only the United States government can increase that credit line if you and I were so lucky, but we're not. Dusty Johnson, the South Dakota congressman, wants to put a stop to this. He's the vice chair of the House Problem Solvers Caucus. They actually try to get beyond the politics, and an equal number of Republicans and Democrats find a way out of our problems. There's a concept. But Congressman, very good to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we spend more than we have. I get that. And we're up against this deadline. I don't know when we technically could be running out of money. We're told sometime this summer. First off, are you on that page? Is it sometime this summer that we could be on the brink?
Seems like it keeps getting moved earlier and earlier. Tax receipts are down a little bit, Neil. And so we're probably looking at the beginning of June rather than the end of June or August.
So let's talk a little bit about, I know what Kevin McCarthy is coming up with, a plan to limit up spending up to about 1% a year, you know, to try to claw back some funds that were meant for COVID, others that were meant for, you know, student loan relief, billions of dollars there. It's, you know, apparently dead to Chuck Schumer and the President of the United States. I don't know how far that goes, but you have another idea. What would that entail?
Well, first off, I would just say that Dave Ramsey is right. You do have to have a long-term vision for the future if you're ever going to get out of debt. And we can't get the president to the negotiating table, Neil. And so there are a group, a bipartisan group, Democrats or Republicans, who've come together to say, Mr. President, you have to come to the table. Neil, that is remarkable that there are dozens of House Democrats that are telling Joe Biden he has got to come negotiate on this debt ceiling. I would note, by the way, I think Kevin McCarthy's got the right approach. We need a long-term strategy, just like Dave Ramsey said. Capping the growth of discretionary spending at 1% a year for the next 10 years makes all the sense in the world.
So I know you guys want to try something that extends sort of like our debt limit, or when we have to revisit this, so sometime in 2025. But along the way, you would have an independent commission coming up with ideas, up or down votes on what would increase the debt or a deficit any given year. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we've got to be willing to talk about some big ideas because, Neil, we're so much deeper in debt than most people realize. We throw around these numbers, but we're at an inflection point. It is not only as bad as it was 5 or 10 years ago, and I'll give you one data point to prove that. So in the last 10 years, we spent $3 trillion just on interest on the national debt. Now, no veteran got a new knee for that. No hungry school kid got a school lunch for that. It's just interest on the debt. $3 trillion. In the next 10 years, it will be $10 trillion. We're working our way up the hockey stick here. We're at a major inflection point. And so, yes, we do need some big boys and some big girls to sit down on a bipartisan basis and figure out what kind of tweaks need to be made to the system long term to get it under control. You know, Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan did this. Back in 1983, they put aside the politics, and they slowly, over the course of decades, increased the retirement age for Social Security. Those guys put us on the right path.
We don't have those guys today.
Well, I think there are, maybe not Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, those guys are legendary, but just the fact that you've got 60 members of the House, including half of them Democrats, who are willing to tell Joe Biden, A, you got to come to the table, and B, you've got to be willing to think about long-term reforms. That shows there are still some statesmen in Washington.
Do you think there are that many, Congressman? I'm not going to question you. I'm just saying that maybe Joe Manchin has raised this issue. I haven't heard the others, you know, screaming about, you know, work with the Republicans.
I know that a lot of folks think that it is just a partisan sniping in Washington, D.C., but just give me 30 seconds to talk about Speaker McCarthy's plan here, because this is not just some idle bumper sticker slogan he's thrown out here. I mean, he's talking about limiting the growth of governmental spending, which all reasonable people know we have to do. He's talked about clawing back unobligated COVID funds. But listen, the pandemic is over. Why are we letting $60 or $70 billion continue to slosh around out there? The student loan forgiveness, which was a clearly unconstitutional giveaway. Well, let's claw that back, put it toward deficit reduction. And then he actually wants to grow the economy through unleashing American energy and getting people back to work. Listen, for my money, that's not just partisan sniping. That's real leadership. And I wish Joe Biden was willing to negotiate.
We'll see. There's still ways to go here, whenever that drop-dead doomsday date is, Congressman. Very good seeing you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Neil.